With Rosenstein soon on the way out, will newly confirmed Attorney General Bill Barr investigate this alleged plot to use the 25th Amendment against President Trump? Joining us now, National Security Attorney Bradley Moss and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz, former chairman of the House Oversight Committee and author of The Deep State. Great to have both with us tonight, gentlemen.
Absolutely. How are you doing, Shannon?
Thanks, Shannon.
Very good. Okay, so I want to play something that Senator Elizabeth Warren said today about this issue of using the 25th Amendment. Here's what she said.
If they believe the president has a problem that triggers the 25th Amendment, then their loyalty is to the Constitution of the United States. It's that simple.
Okay, so Jason, if that's what they literally thought, that there was some legitimate threat to the U.S. or the Constitution, were they taking the right steps?
Well, there was no underlying evidence of that. There was no underlying evidence of the need for a Russia probe. There was no underlying evidence of anything in the 25th Amendment, if you believe what Mr. McCabe said to Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes. Now, remember, this person, Mr. McCabe, was fired, something that's rare for federal employees, for lying. He was on the subject of a February 2018 38-page report by the Inspector General about lying under oath 3 times, lying 4 times in total. So I don't think we can really believe anything that he says. I do think Mr. Baker, though, he does have a lot of credibility. But that's why Congress has to go, and my only hope is Lindsey Graham will yank him up here, because if he's not leaving, Mr. McCabe, if he's not leaving till mid-March, there's plenty of time to go testify before Lindsey Graham's committee.
Rosenstein, mid-March.
Yes.
McCabe's gone.
Rosenstein, yes,
we'll see.
Absolutely.
And listen,
yes.
He's now chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Graham has said this is happening. They're going to get to the bottom of this and find out. In the meantime, Victor Davis Hanson, writing this article is called Autopsy of a Dead Coup. He says about this whole situation, in time, likely will become recognized as the greatest scandal in American political history, marking the first occasion in which U.S. government bureaucrats sought to overturn an election and to remove a sitting U.S. president. Bradley.
I'm trying not to roll my eyes too hard at this whole thing. Look, this is a once-in-a-generation problem these guys faced. They had a candidate where the investigation started during the campaign after George Papadopoulos starts running his mouth. The investigation's ongoing. The president's coming out. He's not giving up his tax returns. His finances are tied up with Deutsche Bank, which is getting raided all the time for being a conduit for Russian money laundering. He's saying there's no contacts with the Russians. His campaign, his senior officials, his campaign chairman is selling polling data to the Russian intelligence operatives. They're being told to coordinate with Roger Stone about WikiLeaks dumps. And then right after he fires James Comey, he goes and brags about it in the Oval Office to 2 senior Russian officials, including the ambassador who was a part of all this drama. I'm not surprised these guys were freaked out. They didn't know what to think. They didn't know which end was up. So they thought of what could we do here? What options do we have? They talked about the 25th Amendment. They didn't go to the White House with armed FBI agents. They talked about going through the 25th Amendment to go to the cabinet, which would involve the vice president if anything happened. All these people selected by the president. This was not a coup. This was bureaucrats trying to figure out how to deal with an unprecedented situation.
Well, Jason, and there are people raising the point today that
I totally disagree with everything you just said.
Okay, well,
just
about everybody who's gotten in trouble as a basis of the Mueller investigation has been for lying to a federal agent, and yet we have a number of people here, including McCabe himself, as you mentioned, the IG report, who got in trouble for lying. A number of these people have had to quit or been dismissed from the FBI, and none of them are facing any charges for anything connected to lying to a federal investigator.
That's what's stunning about Mr. McCabe and why he's on a book tour and on 60 Minutes instead of facing prosecutors. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than this 39-page report by the Inspector General detailing the 4 times that he lied, and yet he's not prosecuted. The Department of Justice has had this information for more than a year, and yet you look at Manafort, Stone, Papadopoulos. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be prosecuted, but if you're going to have equal justice under the law, they should be also going after the person that you think he was the acting director of the FBI for a time for lying.
Bradley, very quickly before we're out of time, but fair to say that the American people might feel better if they realized and felt there wasn't a double standard when it comes to prosecuting this lying stuff.
Of course, and let's be clear here. It wasn't lying. It was lack of candor. And I represent FBI officials all the time who get fired over that. There is a distinction in the law between lack of candor, which is a subjective, arbitrary term the FBI uses, and actually lying to the FBI or to government officials under 18 U.S.C. 1001.
Yeah, my parents, right before they spanked me, would have said that's not telling the truth. Okay. Bradley and Jason, we'll leave it there.